Hey, welcome to Innovate Africa, and today, as always, we focus on innovators who impact lives on the African continent. We'll dispense of the ones and the zeros and the fancy tech, and we'll stick to plain, simple building and creating wealth through property in our decentralized economies, specifically called townships by many people, right? But how does it work? Well, there's a company called BitProp. BitProp raises funding from investors, and they create wealth by building properties for township owners. But how does it work? Well, Dylan Walls is the Chief Operations Officer for BitProp. Dylan, thank you very much for your time. So what is the reason for BitProp's existence? What exactly is your purpose?
So BitProp exists to turn township property owners into property entrepreneurs. And really it's about, if you think about it, if you don't earn a lot of income, it's very hard to save. Traditional saving products really don't allow you to build up much wealth over time. But what a lot of people do have is the land that they own, whether it's formally or informally. So BitProp exists to help them use that land to create a sustainable income and asset that they can pass on to their children or to support them in their pension. And the way we do that is through rental income on the property.
Now, Dylan, it's one thing to say we have a dream, we've got a strategy, but these things all have to be implemented. The realization of this dream is all about putting in the work. So how do you go about doing that?
We partner with township property owners who own their property. They have a house on the property, which is a 1 or a 2 bedroom house. Many times it's a government house, and they have space behind the property they would like to develop. We'll come in with our funding and expertise. So our architects, construction managers will partner with a local construction company, and then we'll build 4 or 6 bachelor flats right behind the house on the same property. The homeowner is still living there. And then for a period of 10 years after that, we're in partnership with the homeowner, co-managing the property. And we'll share the rental income. The homeowner gets 15% gross rental. That's a new income stream for them. And we cover maintenance, insurance, and a return to the investor to make the investment model sustainable. After 10 years, we step out the picture. We're no longer involved. The homeowner has learned to be a property entrepreneur, to run a rental business on their property, and then they're free to do with it what they want, whether that's to continue operating it, to sell the property, to pass it on to their children.
So which areas do you actually operate in? I mean, are you confined to the Western Cape? Are you national? You're looking at international? And who funds all of it?
At the moment, we're Cape Town based, so we operate in various townships around Cape Town: Khayelitsha, Langa, Eersterivier, Blue Downs, and about to expand into a couple more. The ambition has always been to grow beyond that. It's not a Cape Town or a South African problem we're looking at. We could do this across Africa, across many parts of the developing world, and that is very much part of the long-term plan. How do we fund it? So we get private investment in, whether it's entrepreneurs, family offices, impact funds, and the like. They invest into our fund. We use that to develop the properties, and then the rental income goes back into that and earns a return for the investor. So they're invested, say, for 10 years, they'll earn 15.4% per annum return over that 10 years. And so it's a sustainable investment. It attracts capital, which allows us to scale and impact many more property owners than if we had done this as an NGO or with government funding.
When everyone talks about the township economy, you have lots of naysayers. You shouldn't do this. This is why it's not going to work, etc. What did the naysayers have to say? And now that you've proven the model, you've proven the success, what are some of the key learnings that you can share? You've certainly paid the rent, so to speak. What are some of the key learnings that you can share with us when it comes to working in a decentralized economy?
I will say, when we started, there were a lot of assumptions put forward to us that we had to disprove, and those came from the banks, generally from the formal financial sector in South Africa, and that was that we couldn't build at the rate we needed for the model to work. Tenants wouldn't pay rent in the township. The homeowners wouldn't be trustworthy, i.e. they would go around our back and collect the rent. And what we've proven over almost 7 years of operations is that that's simply not true. We have an occupancy of 97.5%, payment rate that's pretty much the same. Our tenants pay on average 3 or 4 days before the due date. Demand is insane. It's massive in the township, and people pay. If they don't pay it, they leave. There's a very strong social pressure because they're living on the property with many other tenants and they're living there with the homeowner. There's a sense of duty to pay rent, and so in fact the payment rate is much higher than in the formal suburbs. Um, we've learned that over the years, and we had to prove it with our own capital in order to attract more capital. But it's an incredibly dynamic market. It works very well.
You mentioned earlier that owners get 15%. Some people might believe that's low, but then they don't understand the whole model, because at the end of the day, you're handing this property back to the owners lock, stock, and barrel. But how much does that 15% actually represent in monetary terms to the owner?
The average homeowner's 15% is about 3,000 rand, which is about, it's 50% more than the state pension. If we look at our portfolio of, let's say, 100 homeowners, it equates to about a 66% increase in their household income. And what they're using that for is groceries, it's school fees, uniforms, paying off municipal accounts. It's not really savings. So that extra 3,000 goes a long way.
Sustainability is a big part of what you're about, the green economy. How do you practically implement that when building these units?
Yeah, so obviously our model has always been very strong on social economic impact. Sustainable development has always been quite tricky in the township construction industry because of the low costs involved, because sustainable development has largely been part of the premium construction industry. But over time, and as technology has become available, we've found different materials we can introduce into our designs that are locally produced. So all of our properties use a plastic aggregate in the concrete, which actually makes it stronger, better heat properties, better acoustic properties. And we save approximately 830 kilograms of plastic per flat. So we've actually been able to have quite a big impact there, and on the back of that have started township plastic collection groups with unemployed people from the streets around where we build, and the plastic collected there gets sold back to the manufacturers of these plastic aggregate bricks. So the person collecting the plastic earns something that they weren't earning anything before, and they're also building our flats by providing the plastic that goes back into the bricks. So that's been quite a cool full circle setup we've set up there that we hope to grow in the future.
Scale, 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 right? That's what a lot of people look at, because the more you scale, the more money you can make. But I just love the impact that you're creating. So let's talk about scaling this. Is there still a lot of work that needs to be done in the Western Cape? Or are you ready to scale nationally? Are you looking at the rest of the developing world, for example? So what does that roadmap look like?
So we think we won't stop in Cape Town. We're on about 500 flats now, 520. We think we will get to 1,000 flats before we start looking elsewhere, and that will be in the next couple of years. And then we're starting the process now of looking beyond that. Is it somewhere else in South Africa? Maybe somewhere in the Western Cape to test how we have to iterate the model. And then we'd like to test it elsewhere in Africa to prove that as an investment model, it can be applied in two very different environments. What that looks like, different cities, different countries have different regulations, rental environments, construction costs, bureaucracy and red tape. We have to take that as it comes and tweak the model, but we believe we can do it. The South African response has been pretty slow, I would say. The Nordic investors have been much more willing to kind of take a leap of faith and put their money into something they think will have impact, but maybe weren't very sure upfront. The South African investors, and we've spoken to quite a few over the years, have been a lot more reluctant. I see it as two things. They're more conservative financially in general, but there's a resistance to what they don't know in the township specifically, and that's probably got to do with how they've grown up, what they've heard about the township, but it seems to be a much bigger hurdle to overcome. We're getting there now. The institutional investors in South Africa are now coming to the table, and that's great. We want them to invest, obviously, into our townships. But it's been a journey to get there, a journey that's been led by the Nordic investors.
The business model is something that really intrigues me, right? So yes, there's rental income and you get a huge percentage of that rental income. But does the model go beyond that? Are there other things that you can plug into these developments that also represents income opportunities for you as a business?
So we're not a property developer. We didn't set out to do that. We never will be, and that's a property developer owns the asset. So after the investment period, they can sell the asset. That's not what we set out to do. We probably never will do that. That being said, it's the market we're working in. There's so much opportunity for things around the model. So, for example, we've started doing solar on our properties, and there's a whole business model around that, the financing of that, sale of electricity to our tenants. That's something we're exploring now. Wi-Fi as well is a big demand for our tenants, and something operationally will be better if we can integrate it into our model. And then, of course, the data we're collecting on the township rental market is super valuable, and there's a lot that could be done there to add value for our tenants and across the township, still to be explored.
Back to the township economy. What is the toughest thing in your experience about working in the township economy and getting done the sort of things that you need to get done in order to deliver the value?
Council. Getting plans approved in the township environment through regulation that was not written for the township environment. We've been on a long journey with the city of Cape Town to rectify that, and they've come to the table, I must say. They love what we do and are very on board with figuring out how to adjust the regulations so that the average homeowner in the township can access information and funding and understand why they need to submit plans and pay fees and that sort of thing. But it's been a long journey that we're still on, and it stops a lot of people from doing what we're able to do for our homeowners.
Lots of people look at the township economy, they go, maybe I should be part of it, maybe I shouldn't. Some are very interested, but they don't know where to start. What is your advice about doing business in and playing in the township economy and delivering value and real impact while you're at it?
I would say have a very open mind. You probably have a lot of misconceptions or things you just don't understand at all about the township market, and then find people that do. Our team is built on people from the township in various different areas. So our rental team, they live in the areas they're renting the flats out to. Our construction teams are from the various townships we work in. Key front-facing people who, where there's a need to understand and it's not township context, it's context from that community, has been so important. And it's worked. We've been able to embed ourselves in the community by finding people on the ground who believe in what we do, are keen to be part of it and help, and by really taking the time to understand our homeowners, to understand the streets they live in, not barge in with a business model, but rather identify what people really want and then work around that.
Can you share one or two stories about an individual or maybe individuals who've been impacted by the work that BitProp actually does? Something that when you think about it and you put your head down on that pillow at night, it puts a massive smile on your face.
There's a lovely lady that we take visitors to quite often, and there's so many stories like this, but this one I hear quite often. She lives in Lunga. She's about to turn 70. She's been on the property since the 70s. Was never able to develop anything on the property. She was in severe municipal debt. We built for her, and she's been able to pay off her debt. Her kids are no longer worrying about her, what she's going, what she'll. They don't have to look after her, and she's now employing others. She's found an old man who lives down the road who didn't have any food, and she's employed him to clean the property. She puts 100 rand in a month, and she gets her tenants to put in 50 rand each. And this guy cleans the property, he takes out the bins, and I think it's just small, but it's a lovely story of how enabling someone to, we've enabled her to use her asset, her land is generating an income for her now, and there's a knock-on effect. She's helping this old man. She's brought her tenants together on her property to help someone else in the community. And she's also paved her driveway. She's replaced the doors on her house, and she's so proud of that because it sounds like a small thing, but it's something she was thinking about for decades beforehand. It's lovely to hear the stories like that.
Finally, someone might be sitting here really intrigued by what you're having to say, and they want to invest in your story in real terms with capital. What do they do? Where do they go? What should they know?
Yeah, I would love to chat to them. We're always looking for more people to partner with. We want to scale the model as much as possible. We'd also like to be in touch with people who have ideas, who'd like to contribute to the model. It's such a big problem we're solving. We can't do everything ourselves. They can reach out at info@bitprop.com. If they're interested in investing, we'll chat further, explain the model. It's if they're impact oriented, I would say it's an amazing opportunity to conserve your capital and have significant impact at the same time.
Well, there you go. It's not just about ones and zeros and fancy tech, but BitProp has shown that you can take property, you can implement a property play, as it were, in a township while creating value for the individuals who own the properties. But far beyond that, you can also deliver value to the communities within which these properties are built. And that, to me, is real innovation. When I talk about innovation, I talk about it broadly. And when I talk about impact, I talk about how ordinary people's lives are changed for the better. I look forward to seeing you on Innovate Africa next week.